From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Fox 8 studios in New Orleans, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Fazende, riding shotgun as he does each and every podcast. This is Andre Johnson.
Junior.
Do not forget the Junior. It's very important to remember the JR at the end of the name. Before we get into today's content, be sure to like, to share, to rate, to review. If you are watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Get the bell notification for when we drop that fire content. And also, hello to the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. Glad you have found us here. All right, Andre, it is Wednesday in the city of New Orleans. I spent some time in Baton Rouge today, my old stomping grounds at my alma mater, LSU, for LSU's Pro Day. Beautiful day outside. An interesting day up in Baton Rouge. We are in the swing of things when it comes to the NFL draft. So we're going to get into that today, some stuff that I wanted to get to. But first things first, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. You know, it was my burger /
So you went Baton Rouge too?
Yeah, literally. I think I passed you guys on the highway, unless there was another Fox 8 truck that was going to Baton Rouge. I'm pretty sure I passed you guys, and I was like, yeah, it's about that time for them to head up there too. So, yeah, I'm feeling good. I got my burger. I got my haircut. I'm ready to go.
Ready to go. Cleaned up, looking nice. All right. Well, yeah, so I was up there. Interesting pro days, how each school does it differently. I was at Tulane's on Tuesday over at the Saints camp. I was at LSU's today. It's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. Felt like today's was a little long just in terms of just how much they were doing on the field and how long it actually took. I'll get to some of my impressions of that a little bit later. But today, like I said, we're really switching into draft mode, and I'm going to have the mock draft Monday. I just want to do it Monday. Mm-hmm. I got it all. I got 8 out of the 9 picks done, and I'm going to do the mock draft on Monday. But leading up to the draft, and we're going to do some stuff when it comes to the draft, there are some trends that have certainly popped up over the last couple of years. I mean, you talk about a team like the New Orleans Saints, a team that's trying desperately to get back to the winning ways. There are certain things that have to be looked at in terms of possible changes to get those better outcomes. And I think, I don't want to say I stumbled upon something, but it really stood out because it always kind of, like I thought about it, but I really didn't crunch the numbers. And that basically is just how much the Saints need a big draft class in 2025. That's why I wanted to go with the big picture today.
Definitely, because, you know, as you look at the quantity and quality of the Saints picks over the last 5 years, there's a few trends that you can notice, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to start in 2020, and we're going to go through each year. We're going to name the guys who the Saints picked. We're going to name whether they were hits and whether they were misses, because the Saints need some hits this season. And then I know you've got a big note about the draft as well.
Yeah, I'm going to get I guess I'll get started on that as well. Because I think this is probably going to start to pick up over the next couple of weeks as everybody gets into kind of the draft mode. And that is the Saints' recent approach to the draft. And I say recent, it's probably 10, 15 years, if you really think about it, and just how far the numbers that they have drafted has truly been thrown off by their approach. When you really get down to it, Andre, it's an issue of quality, but I don't think it's quite as big an issue of quality. Frankly, I think the Saints have a couple of more hits than maybe we're willing to admit, just at least over the last 5 years, but I truly believe this now, given their current state of affairs, given what they've done the last 4 years, given who is and who is not on the roster, and just the makeup of the roster. I truly believe the Saints' biggest problem when it comes to the draft is one of not quality, but quantity. They just aren't drafting enough players. It started to break down some numbers, and man, I couldn't believe how skewed it was. I mean, and I didn't even get to some of the other teams like the Philadelphia Eagles or some other teams that may or may not be in the Saints boat, or you know, as far away from the Saints boat that furthers my point, or whatever the case may be in that regard. I just stuck to the NFC South, and an NFC South that has been attainable, but yet the Saints have not been able to attain it in the last 4 years. You mentioned it from 2020 to 2024. Okay, so that's 5 of the most recent draft classes. In that time frame, Tampa Bay has drafted 37 players. Falcons have drafted 37 players. The Panthers have drafted 36 players. The Saints have drafted total in that time span 29 players. To put that in perspective, that 7 or 8 player differential is basically a whole draft class behind.
Yeah.
A whole draft class behind. Think about that. That's the equivalent of the Saints going, you know what, we're going to take this year off from the draft and let our competitions go ahead and draft some guys. We're good. When you really add up the numbers and how much it's kind of added up over the course of that 5-year period, I'm sorry, that's not sustainable. Not sustainable. It's just simply not sustainable. So how did they get here? Well, it's no secret how they got here. We understand how they got here. It's their addiction to trading up in the draft. They trade up as much as maybe more than any other team in the NFL. It's well chronicled. Sometimes when you trade up and get that guy, it works out. Sometimes when you trade up and that player does not quite work out. But when you trade up, you are forfeiting a draft pick essentially, either in the present draft class or the future draft classes, to go up and get that player, which makes the need to land on that player even higher. They've traded up in every draft since the last 11 years. And it's probably more than that. I mean, they have done it every single year. They have not traded back since, I believe, 2006 or 2007. They got away with it because, frankly, they had much more sustainable roster with the greatest player that ever wore black and gold in Drew Brees, and frankly, a better coaching staff to fill in some of the gaps when you don't have big enough draft classes. But now, it is time for that plan to change. Yeah. If you are not doing what you want to do from a success standpoint, you have to look at everything. And they look at the coaching staff, they made a change. They look at hopefully a medical staff or whatever, a different approach to health and fitness, and hopefully that makes it a change. Another area you need to make a change is your approach to the draft when it comes to how you accumulate talent. Not necessarily types of players you get, although obviously that factors in as well, but the number of players that you get. It's the cumulative effect. Simple math. In a smaller draft class, the misses are going to hurt you more. Missing on just 2 players in a 5-player class is going to hurt a lot more than missing on 2 players in a 7-player class, or even 3 players in a 7-player class. Now let's just go through it. You got the numbers right there. You got the names right there.
Yep. And starting with 2020, that's where that point becomes apparent because
so we're gonna say hit or miss. All right, go ahead.
In 2020, they only had 4 draft picks. Okay. Starting with the first round, Cesar Ruiz.
Hit.
That's a hit. Easy. No second round pick. So in round 3, Zach Bond.
I mean, do you call that a hit? I guess it's a hit, but it's not for hit for you. So I'm going to say no. I'm going to say that's not a hit.
That's a hit for Philadelphia. Yeah. That's a miss for the Saints because you've got an all-pro player that couldn't get consistent playing time here and didn't win and won a championship with another team. So that's a miss for the Saints. Also in the 3rd round that year, tight end Adam Troutman, miss. University of Dayton's finest. That would be a miss for the Saints. 7th round, Tommy Stevens.
Miss. So that's 1 out of 4. That's 1 out of 4. So you see the ratio there? 2021.
1 out of 4 in 2020. So we go to 2021. Pick number 1, Peyton Turner.
Miss.
That's probably the biggest miss that we're going to name today. Round 2, Pete Werner.
Hit. I think that's pretty solid.
Yeah, that's a hit. Pete Werner, solid starter throughout the years. Pick round 3, Paulson Adebo.
Hit.
That's a hit. Shame he couldn't get that second deal here, but for what he gave him, that's a hit. Round 4, quarterback Ian Book.
Miss.
That is a miss. Round 6, offensive lineman Landon Young.
I'm going to give that a hit because he matched the value that he was drafted at. He's been a quality backup, so that's a hit.
Yeah, consistent depth for the last 3 seasons.
So we're at 4.
And now 7th pick, K'Wan Baker.
Miss. Didn't make the team.
Yeah, that's a miss. So you've got 4 hits in 11 picks so
11.
far.
All right, 2022.
This is interesting. A guy we talked about recently. Round 1, Chris Olave.
I'm going to give that a hit.
See, I gave it a miss.
Okay. But at least he's giving you something. So I'm going to, okay. So we're on the borderline with that. Okay.
Yeah, what you would expect out of a first round pick drafted that high. So far, I would say miss, but I can see the logic behind hit. Another first round pick that year, Trevor Penning.
I can't get that a hit. That's a miss right now.
Yeah, I mean, he was better. He was a lot better last season. Penning was not the problem.
That's a maybe.
But for a first-round pick,
he hasn't given you the value.
He has not given you that value.
So right now, that's a miss.
I have that as a miss as well. This next one, round 2, was probably my hardest one, and that was Alontae Taylor.
Hit. That's a hit. He's giving you absolutely that second-round value with the position versatility. I'm giving that a hit.
I lean hit more than I lean miss, so I'll give him a hit. But it was hard going back and forth because it's a second-rounder. That's still a high-round draft pick for a guy that, barring injury, has essentially been your number 3 corner ever since he's been drafted.
So I gave him 2 hits there. And what was the last 2 picks? One, the
DeMarco Jackson.
Miss.
and Jordan Jackson.
Miss. So what is that? 2 out of 5?
Yep.
That's 2 out of 5. Okay.
Yep, 2 out of 5. So
All
if you assume Chris Olave is a hit,
that's with
6 out of 16, 5 out of 16 for me because I said Olave so far has been a miss.
Okay, 6 out of 16 on the plus side. 2023.
First round, Brian Brzee.
Hit.
That's a hit. He's been solid. He's arguably your best defensive player right now. Round number 2, Isaiah Foskey.
That's so far it's been a miss.
Yeah, that's a big miss. Round 3, Kendre Miller.
Miss.
4, Nick Saldivari.
Miss.
Also round 4, Jake Haener.
Miss.
Round 5, Jordan Howden, excuse me. Jordan Hawkins, I'm thinking Pelicans.
That's not a bad miss, but it's a 5th round pick. He's giving you something, so put that as a maybe.
I put that as a miss because he's had chances to break into that starting lineup, and as former head coach Dennis Allen said, that he never came forward and took it. So I gave that one a miss, and then 6th round pick, no longer with the team, A.T. Perry.
That's a miss. I mean, I guess.
And that's the first year that they've had 7 draft picks since we've been counting it since 2020.
Okay, so that's 1 hit. And look, what's the numbers right there? What's the ratio right there?
That would be 1 out of 7 that year, 7 out of 23 total.
So it's quality and quantity. I'm not even gonna go 24. It's too early. I'll give him the hit. I'll give him the hit for Fuaga, and I think Kool-Aid's on the right trajectory. And honestly, your rookie year with a 5th round quarterback, I mean, Rattler gave you at least something, but I'm going to throw 2024 out. So what's the ratio?
For you, 7 out of 23. For me, 6 out of 23, which I can't do mental math that fast, but I know it's not a very good percentage.
So that's not a great percentage.
You're hovering around 25%.
What's even worse is you got a smaller percentage with a small group of players, and you didn't even include the 2024 class. That all adds up, okay? That all adds up because there's also this. Think about how much easier it would be if all those players we mentioned, a couple of more hits. Just give me 4 more hits, all right? 4 more hits out of that group.
50% range.
Think about how much easier it would be to move off older players past their prime instead of endless restructures to hold on and create space. And when they get older, it costs more to get rid of them. If you have confidence in the young talent coming up, the Saints haven't had nearly as much talent coming up because they have deliberately, by their strategy, shrunk the talent pool to choose from with fewer draft picks over time. 23 was a 29 total over the 5-year span. So bottom line, I'll close out with this. The Saints don't just need a good draft class in 2025. They need a big one that features both quality and quantity coming up this season.
Yeah, because ultimately it's not a quality or quantity issue like you touched on. It's both of them. Mm-hmm. The Saints have not done a great job drafting. I mean, we touched Cesar Ruiz, just to rehash the hits that we had. Cesar Ruiz, Pete Werner, Paulson Adebo, Landon Young, Brian Brzee, and you say Chris Olave. I say no Chris Olave because of the conversation we were having before, saying Chris Olave has not necessarily transcended into that number 1 receiver that you would be okay paying $35, $40 million to, and that's a high 1st round pick. So the Saints have not only picked bad players, they haven't picked enough players. So not only are you batting a low percentage, you're not even getting into the batter's box.
Not getting up at bats
very often. So yeah, it's definitely a problem. And this is a year where the Saints do have a good number of picks this year. They've got a top 10 pick.
They've got 9 selections.
Yeah, that's the most since 2020 since we've been
Keep
counting.
all 9. Keep all 9. If anything, try to add more. I mean, get that big draft class this year. You have to. You have to restock the talent pool.
And you've got to hit.
You've got to hit.
Especially with that. It's been a long time since the Saints have had a top 10 draft pick. You got to hit.
You got to hit. And look, they've lived off that 2017 draft class for a long time. What's the next best one since 2017? Honestly,
probably
21 maybe?
Yeah, 21 where you got Werner,
19 was okay when you got McCoy, Caden Ellis, and C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Unfortunately, McCoy's still with the team, but the other 2 guys are not.
Ellis isn't
that was
here,
a little bit
Johnson won a ring with another team.
That was a little bit of outside the 5-year window, so we didn't include that one. But I think you guys understand the point, and you all understand. Give yourself more chances. It's easy to miss, or the misses are a little easier to take if you have a bigger draft class for one because of the percentages, but also if you've got a franchise quarterback who is a multiplier and an elite coaching staff, which maybe this coaching staff will become elite at some point, but that like the Saints enjoyed for the better part of a decade, you can afford a few mistakes here and there and still offset it with the multiplication of Drew Brees' play, the game planning of the prior coaching staff, and also the fact that they hit on quite a few undrafted free agents. I don't know if that's the formula for success, though, just hoping to fill in the gaps with undrafted free agents. I think eventually that catches up to you, and I think that has caught up to them now. So the bottom line is, Saints, don't just get a good class, get a big class.
Yeah, and to rehash something that we talked about in previous podcasts, since 2020, you've essentially had a quarterback issue or a question mark at that quarterback position. And of the 30 picks, if you include the picks from 2024, of the 30 picks, you've got 3 quarterbacks that you drafted in those 30 picks, a 4th rounder, another 4th rounder, and a 5th rounder. Ian Book, Jake Haener, Spencer Rattler. When you've had a question mark at quarterback for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
None of those 3 have panned out so far. I think it's time to go ahead and spend that high pick on a quarterback, because your history states those mid-round guys that you've taken when you needed more, it hasn't turned out so well for them.
That has not turned out well for them. And, look, they don't just have 9. They have 6 in the top 130.
Yeah.
So you have a chance. I mean, that was what made the 2017 class so good. They had 5 picks in the top 3 rounds. So it was like, I mean, they had an opportunity to really connect on some guys early in the draft, which is obviously where the majority of the best players go, regardless of, some of the ones that slip through the cracks. So Saints have got to rethink this philosophy, and I hope they do. Or even if you don't rethink the philosophy and think, you know what, I'm not going to trade back. That's not what we do. That's fine. Just show a little restraint when it comes to trading up. Unless it's somebody you absolutely have to have, like a quarterback you think you can go up and get, or whatever the case may be when it comes to that. It's a game-changing Hall of Fame. If Travis Hunter was all of a sudden available at like pick 7 and you were able to get up and get him, fine.
That's funny. Me and Juan Kincaid, our sports director, we were having a conversation. He asked me a couple hours ago, he was like, if Shedeur Sanders falls to like 7 or 8, do you as the Saints look to trade up? And I'm like, if that's your guy,
we're gonna have the Shedeur debate at some point on this pod. I can promise you that.
If that's your guy, you got to go up. But I think Saints definitely need to hit. And one thing they haven't hit on, or one thing they haven't even attempted on in seems like a long time, is drafting an LSU player. Mm-hmm. Now, you were at LSU Pro Day today. I want to hear kind of what were your takeaways from the Pro Day, and then after that, we'll talk about, do any of the purple and gold Tigers, would they fit well with the black and gold Saints?
Yeah, there were quite a few takeaways for there being. Look, it's a lot. Pro Days, it's a lot of. You're watching warm-ups. You're watching guys run the 40-yard dash. Everybody's quiet. There's like a couple thousand people there watching one guy run. They call it the Underwear Olympics, the Combine. It's not that much different at the Pro Days because these guys are, they're in like the suits that they wear or the biking shorts, whatever the hell you call them. Like it's basically, they're not in pads. So they're doing drills. Drills are, painful to watch. I'm sure the coaches are getting some out of it. They're painful to watch. And then it was the bench press and the vertical. So the big news didn't have anything to do with anybody on the field. It was Will Campbell. Will Campbell was able to measure in somehow his arm length at 33 inches, up like 3/8 of an inch or half of an inch from the combine. And if you know anything about NFL, the baseline is usually 34. Some teams will dip into 33. Taliesin Fuaga had 33 1/8, by the way, if you're wondering. So 32 5/8 for Will Campbell was not good. 33 is good. He said the measurements were off at the combine. I have no idea. But he was able to check in at 33. So if you liked him, if you're a team that liked him, you were able to at least check that box. That one worry is now, I guess, kind of gone, because that's usually about the farthest they're going to go. Because if you're any shorter than 33, depending on how tall you are, you're probably going to have to kick inside. So that was one. The other one was Kyron Lacey was there. We'll see what's going to happen with him. He wasn't invited to the combine. Obviously, he's dealing with a lot of legal issues with the tragedy that happened in Thibodeau. We know what he was accused of or charged with. So they're going to have to. He's going to have to deal with that. And he ran a 4.5, and he measured at 6'2", 212. So that was sort of a big storyline just heading in, because no one had seen him in quite some time since he had to deal with that legal issue. The other one is Josh Williams probably helped himself the most. The former walk-on running back ran a 4.45 40, fastest time for LSU of any LSU player, 42.5-inch vertical. And this is a guy that's obviously was not on anyone's radar, and now he's becoming on perhaps team's radar. I don't think he's going to be drafted, but I do think he's a guy that could work himself into the undrafted ranks, because where he was rated before today was like, you should probably try the CFL. That's where he was. Now maybe with a 4.45 40-yard dash and a 42 vertical, I think it was like a 10-1 broad jump, which is outstanding. Josh Williams certainly helped himself. And Mason Taylor, very safe pick. Looked fantastic today. Looked really smooth with the bench press. Josh Williams had 23 reps on the bench press as well. So those were the top kind of news items from the guys that participated in the Pro Day today.
So looking at the guys, and you've said one of their names just now, at least that I would put on my list. When it comes to the Saints, what are some of the best fits, LSU Tiger-wise, that the New Orleans Saints could realistically draft that could help this team?
I think Will Campbell's going to be an option at 9. I think he's going to be available possibly at 9. I think he's a guy that, what would he play? And do the Saints have a true need at tackle? Can you kick Trevor Penning into guard? Can Will Campbell play right tackle and left tackle? Is that interchangeable? You talk to some linemen, they say that's more difficult than you realize. Mason Taylor, to me, is pretty smooth. I mean, he's just a very clean prospect. It just does a lot of things really, really well. No character issues. Son of a former NFL player, nephew of a former NFL player. So he's another one that could potentially fit. The guy I was a little disappointed in I wasn't able to see today, but who I'm really starting to circle for the Saints on day 2, late day 2, round 3, if they don't get an edge pass rusher early, is Braden Swinson. Braden Swinson did not participate today. Neither did Will Campbell, by the way. He just did the measurements. But to me, Braden Swinson, given the knowledge of the system, given his size, given his ability off the edge as a true stand-up 3-4 guy, he was somebody that I think could potentially be a fit for the Saints at that pick. This is a pretty good year for those type of edge pass rushers where you can get a quality one in day 2, early day 3. Braden Swinson was really the guy that I had been looking at even before the Pro Day, and I really wanted to kind of see him up close today. I was a little bummed that he didn't go today because I have him kind of really connected to the Saints right now. He was the other one that I looked at from a skill set standpoint that could be a good fit for the Saints.
Yeah, I like Will Campbell as a fit for the Saints, but I don't like where they would have to draft him because Will Campbell isn't making it to the second round. Will Campbell is going to be a first-round pick, so if you're the Saints and you draft him, you would have to pick him at number 9. And I talked about it last podcast. I think the offensive line, ironically, is one of the most stable positions
right.
that the Saints have right now.
Right.
Like, it was probably the biggest concern at the start of 2024, but right now it's probably one of your most stable positions, and you need help in so many other areas. You need a corner. You need a receiver. You could use a running back. You need one of those quarterbacks if they fall. I'm not a big fan of the Saints taking an offensive lineman in the top 10 when I think that you need playmakers and guys who can make more of an immediate impact in the places that the Saints need it. So Will Campbell would be a great fit, but I'm not sure I am sure. I don't like them picking him.
What if he bumped
9.
Trevor Penning? What if they went? What if they moved Fuaga to right tackle, which is his natural position, slid Campbell to left tackle, and was able to kick Penning into left guard?
That's a lot to ask of Penning because you just asked him to go from left tackle to learning right tackle, and he actually succeeded at right tackle. Yeah. And it's like, okay, well, guess what? Now we're going to move you to the inside, and you got to try to learn the inside. It's a lot to ask of Penning, who finally kind of found his niche on that offensive line at the NFL level. So that would be a tough ask for really all of them, because even Fuaga, who is a natural right tackle, but you just had him spend all last season learning left tackle, and I know he said it was going to be easy pre-draft, then he actually got here, and he was like, all right, maybe it's a little harder than I thought. Mason Taylor's another one. Like you said, he's just smooth. I love the way he plays the game.
He really is.
He fits the modern tight end and what you would expect from them. And the Saints have a need at tight end. I know they just re-signed Jawan Johnson. Foster Moreau is still in the air, but Mason Taylor is a guy who can step in and I think really battle for that tight end 1 spot. And you could get him in those middle rounds.
Yeah, second or third round. So I think that's a quality pick if the draft took them to him. because like I said, he was really smooth on the bench press at 28 reps. And, sometimes you get that bench press, there's a lot of bouncing going on. It's not really, but he was really smooth with it. We were all kind of, because I don't watch it. I'm like, oh, this is pretty good. He's really smooth, good form with it. Josh Williams the same way. Another thing before we get out of here, how much time do we have left?
About a minute.
You know who was throwing passes today?
Nussmeier?
Garrett Nussmeier. So it was almost like his pro day, because now all the scouts got a little bonus work of Garrett Nussmeier, who was throwing go routes to Chris Hilton, who was throwing sail routes to Bauer Sharp, who I think is going to be a good player for LSU, the tight end. He was still throwing to Kyron Lacey. It looked like he had Aaron Anderson out there. So Mason Taylor didn't do on-field drills. But Nussmeier might have been the guy that scouts talk about the most, because he's going to be in this position at this point next year, and we're going to be talking about potential first-round sort of attributes. They got their first glimpse of Garrett Nussmeier up close and personal at LSU's Pro Day today.
Yeah, last I checked, he was still the leading odds guy for the Heisman this year.
Crazy, yeah.
You've seen what these second-year LSU quarterbacks do, and the 2026 quarterback class has been talked about a lot between Arch, Drew Aller, Garrett Nussmeier, so it'll be interesting to see where he winds up landing.
All right. We out of here?
We're
out of time. All right, for Andre Johnson Jr., I'm Sean Fazende. We'll catch you guys next time on Overtime.